Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Lost in Space Season 2, Episode 1. It's called Shipwrecked, so full spoilers for the episode, as always. We're back for Season 2. Season 1 was like April last year, what I say. This season has hit on Christmas Eve, and
Yep.
we're here to talk about it, despite the fact that it's Christmas Eve.
We are dedicated.
We quite enjoyed Season 1 of this show. I mean, it obviously wasn't like one of the more cerebral highlights of the year.
It's not highbrow,
Yeah.
but it's entertaining.
But it was a pretty fun adventure show, and I was constantly kind of just into just like I think we're at a point now where TV like sci-fi is like when this and like The Expanse are on the lower end for sci-fi visual effects, and then you've got like Star Trek Discovery and like Mandalorian at the higher end of visual effects on TV. Like we're at a good place with sci-fi where, like, and I say the low end here, not saying it actually looks bad. It looks good.
It looks very good still, and
Yeah.
that was something we praised a lot in the first season.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure if we see something on network TV, we'll find a new low bar again. But like,
It basically doesn't count anymore, though, does it?
yeah. So it's fun to be able to be in these worlds and stuff. And I think Netflix, especially, a lot of Netflix originals are just people in rooms talking. Like a lot of Netflix shows do feel kind of cheap outside of the talent they've got involved. But I'm watching this, and this is kind of the opposite. Where there's not really. I mean, Parker Posey's kind of an own name, but like,
It's pretty much all just visual spectacle.
yeah, it's mostly that's where the money's went on Lost in Space. So we start off this episode. 7 months have passed since the end of season 1, and they're on a planet. They're picked up a nearby planet. They've got like a little strip of land. There's like ocean coming in at both sides, and they've got a little farm going. They've got a tent with a farm, and it's Christmas. I mean, this is maybe the one small reason they actually released this in Christmas Eve is there's one like Christmas scene in this episode. Yeah. I don't imagine it's going to come up again in the season. Doesn't feel like it will. It feels like no, we did the Christmas moment and that's it. So I don't know if that was like they knew they were launching at that time, or when they were picking a date they realised, hey, the first episode's got a Christmas scene in it. Let's put it in Christmas Eve.
Could have gone either way, really, couldn't it?
Yeah. So Will's on to drive the chariot, and the characters are kind of, what we remember to be Smith's locked up in a room. She's, been taken to bathroom with guard, Penny being the guard more often than not, and she's trying to manipulate her and trying to like turn her against her family, which never really works, which I kind of appreciate. Like, it never felt like there was a couple of moments where Penny kind of stuck up for her because she had a good idea, but there was never a moment where you thought, oh, she's actually going to betray her family, or
at least not yet. Maybe over the course of the season it kind of gets towards that, but
I don't think, well, maybe, but by the end of this episode, it feels like we've turned away from that plot line to more just because the smartest thing this episode does, I think, is how it handles Smith and how everything they go through in this episode, like, it's kind of revealed at the end that she's behind all of it, but in a weird way, it kind of pushed the agenda that Maureen herself wanted to have, and she can't really argue with her too much. There's this really nice scene towards the end of the episode, because what happens is that their farm like tent has every so often gets a puncture, and they have to go and like patch it up and make sure the atmosphere doesn't ruin all their crops. But there's a really bad one in the middle of the night, and John has to go out there. He gets injured, trying to do it, and then the crops are all destroyed. And he was dead set against Maureen's insane plan to somehow, because what they're struggling for now is energy, and they're using solar like sheets to try and capture energy, but
it's just not enough.
The amount they're using per day and the amount they're capturing means that they're only banking so little per day that it's going to take at least a year before they can actually launch off the planet. And she has this insane idea, because there's this like consistently daily lightning storm over out in the ocean that's like, hey, we can go out there and just like, Back to the Future, basically. Get your cable out and Doc Brown it, as it were.
I mean, it's got to work, right? Why not?
But of course, obviously the question we have is like, well, yeah, but how are you going to get out there? The ship can't launch. And the other characters point that out, and eventually it was not until after John's given in, because the crops are died, and it's like, no, we just have to try and go somewhere now because we're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
And Maureen's got good arguments though for wanting to leave, because she actually puts it like, like, if we just stay here and like, yeah, we can survive, but the kids will never meet anyone, they'll never have friends, they'll never have loved ones, they'll never have families, like, they'll have nothing to grow into. They're just going to be stuck as our kids until they die.
It's not a pleasant image for them, is it?
Yeah, and be alone and miserable after we're dead, and it's just them. Like, I mean, of course, no one brings up the elephant in the room that, well, there is one single man for one of the girls at least when the time comes.
It's a start.
Yeah, Don's there. And I mean, Smith's a bit old for Will, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe in 15 years when he's can't procreate though. She'll be well into menopause.
Yeah,
by the time.
Possibility at there.
Yeah. So, not too bright. But it's after the Corrupts are dead that he agrees to this insane plan. And the insane plan, this comes into the adventure of the show, which is we're going to attach sails to the top of the ship and sail it, turn it into a boat essentially, and sail it into the ocean and get to this lightning, which is very dangerous because there's monsoons constantly popping up and there's jaggy, rocky areas in the water, and there's going to be all these problems. So we get a lot of adventure. We get a lot of like narrow escapes and dodges, and problem solving and trying to like push themselves off the rocks and so on.
Basically, and I don't mean this as a critique or a complaint.
Yes.
It just feels like more Lost in Space, right? It feels like season 1. It feels like it hasn't missed a beat. It's just, oh look, there's a natural disaster / hazard that we have to overcome on an alien planet.
Yeah, it's that. You've got some heart with the characters, and you've got some disasters to circumvent and navigate. That's basically what the show is. And John's luckily a sailor. He's someone who spent a lot of time in boats, and Smith claims to be as well. And it's not until John gets injured during some stuff up top where Maureen has to give in and finally let Smith out and sort of let her take the reins. And she does actually successfully navigate them through some rough patches.
Yeah, and she sees the danger coming beforehand because she says she can read the currents, but that John obviously isn't skilled enough to do that. I assume maybe John, like bigger like ships rather than boats.
Yeah, it doesn't really go into it too much. I was wondering. Yeah, I was wondering like where his experience comes from exactly. Like, does he just like boats? Does he do a bit of sailing?
I mean, he was
in the military, but I don't know if he was specifically in the Navy. Was he?
That's what I mean. I can't remember exactly. I wonder if he was in the Navy, and that would pretty much explain it.
Yeah,
but again, and that would still justify big big ships rather than boats where you're manually sailing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that even that he never actually worked with sails per se.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And Joe, on that note, we're talking about things that were established in season 1 there.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the first time ever, Netflix gave me a recap.
Oh, really?
And it might be the first time ever I didn't really feel like I needed it for this show.
Lost in Space. I think I needed it just purely for the engine that's sitting in the cargo bit of the ship. That was the only thing that I kind of needed.
They bring it up pretty quickly though.
They bring it up, but I'd forgotten that, and it was nice to see the robot taking on the evil robot again, just to sort of refresh the ending of the show.
Sure.
And of course, Will's kind of upset that the robot's not there. He wants to find him. There's a nice little moment where he thinks he sees him in the water because there's these sort of fish that are luminescent, and even the girls think it's him for a second until the fish kind of separate, and it's like, oh no, it wasn't his eye, it was just a grouping of fish. And we do see the end, of course. And what's interesting though at the end is that when we do see the robot in his little teaser scene, is that what he's drawing on the wall is stuff that's happening in this episode. So at the end of the episode, before we cut to this scene, Will's telling his little model of the robot everything that's happening. He's sort of talking to it as if it's a diary. Yeah. I think it's interesting that the robot seems to actually be receiving this information in some capacity.
Yeah, I'm not sure because it's a very visual capacity though, because it's drawing the the ship with the sails, and I don't know how articulate Will was to have passed that message along, or if maybe there's some sort of something else we're missing, some sort of visual link.
Maybe he also draws the chariot, so he knows Will's taking lessons. So again, it's both something that he could theoretically see if there's some sort of visual of the planet, or it's also something that Will would obviously tell him. I did love the joke though, where he's learning to drive for the first time, and they're going back and forth with the dad, and then you just see Penny walking outside, keeping up pace, and show how to race. So and Penny's diary entries get turned into a book. Which everyone seems to have read except Maureen. So so maybe we will continue her being disillusioned with her mother a little bit and make her sort of turn elsewhere. But
I think that's why I assume we will still kind of go down that path to some degree. In that it's clearly setting this up, and while Dr. Smith is maybe not part of the family per se, but is not under lock and key by the end of the episode. She's still.
Well, that's why I think to come back to the scene with her and Maureen is where it gets the most interesting for her character, is that we've seen that she's very good at manipulating, but this is now a season where everyone knows her bullshit. Everyone knows what she's like, and she still has to try and do it. So I think it's very interesting that instead of like tricking Maureen here, she actually kind of almost brings her down to her level not inadvertently from her point of view, but like it's not like Maureen did anything wrong. But when Smith points out, hey, me ruining those crops, if she ever outright says yes, I did that, it's more in theory I could have done that, and if I did do that, then that helps your plan, that gets you what you wanted, and we would never have left otherwise. And I thought the performance from Maureen, like just to look in her face as she's kind of processed and doesn't say anything, can't talk back, can't condemn her. It's just like I have to accept.
Kind of right.
Yeah, I have to accept that this kind of evil act might have actually helped a little bit. And I think it's this interesting thing where maybe she'll somehow like almost try and bring everyone down to her level in a way. That may be the kind of the corruption of her this season, is that she kind of lowers everyone down to, maybe not quite down to her level, but like everyone kind of starts like thinking differently because she's in their ear.
I get that. I think right now my prediction would be, she's still kind of targeting Penny, so to speak, and it'll come down to a point where she's presenting an idea and Maureen's presenting a different one, and Penny will side with Smith over her mother, and it'll become something quite big in that regard. And
I mean,
that might not actually be genuine in that moment, but because she's done enough to make them think that she's maybe trustworthy enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a moment we'll get. I think for me, it's more the morality battle of like everyone's starting to think like her because she's going to prove her way is right, probably a number of times. Here being the first big example where Maureen can't really argue with her, and ultimately having to decide to be better. Just be better. Like, I don't want to quite say she's a Joker, but there's definitely some like vibes of the ideology battle here, and how she processes things and how she tries to convince everyone everyone should be out for themselves and yada yada yada. So be curious to see how that develops over the course of the season. But what I like about it though is a complete status quo change, because again they know what she's like. This is completely different from her in the first season, where they all think she's a nice person and she's successfully hiding her her conniving and whatnot. Here she somehow has to do it. It's like this has went from like, I don't know what you compare the first season to, but this season's way more Hannibal Lecter. She's behind the glass and yet she's still so dangerous. Like that's what this season is.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm with it.
Which again works with the Joker. Just the idea that even in Arkham with Harley, like he'll still corrupt and drag people down.
Never safe.
Yeah, so no, I think there's some interesting things to play with there. Obviously, the big ending is that there's a waterfall in the middle of the ocean, which is very weird, of course, but that's part of the fun of sci-fi. But it's clearly been made by something. There's a being that's made this, because it's very straight. It looks like a device, and this presumably is where the lightning's hitting.
I think so, because it's a big crevice. It's a waterfall on both sides,
and it's metal.
And it has these poles in it that I'm assuming are essentially lightning rods.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're in the right place. So they're actually just dangling at the end of this waterfall. At the end of the episode, and this is kind of leave things off. So, part of me was thinking halfway through, okay, we're probably going to end this episode with them, like, achieving this and getting off the planet. But obviously, we're still here, and so I don't necessarily think we're going to be on this planet all season. Like, I feel like we probably are going to leave.
I agree. At the moment, this planet's kind of too one note to stick around on it. And the fact that they've been there for 6-7 months, it's more exciting to push them into something completely new, right? Yeah,
and the goal here, of course, is that the egg engine that's from the robots does essentially have like jump drive technology, which they don't have, but because it flew through them to this part of the universe on its own, if Maureen can somehow understand it and maybe mangle it a bit, she can make it jump them to where they want to go.
Get them back, essentially.
Get them back to the colony. However, we do actually see a little bit in one of the flashback to the end of last season. The robot fight actually spilled into the colony ship, so the colony ship might be doomed. Like, we don't see enough. We just see them go inside it. We don't see like what happens once they're in there.
Yeah, we see them go in. My assumption at the time and seeing this now, I assume, is just okay, that section had some damage and it was stuff went wrong, but I don't think it caused a problem with the overall ship. I don't think it extended that far, but I could be wrong.
Well, I wasn't so much thinking the impact damaged the ship. I was thinking more the bad robot would kill a lot of them or something.
I mean, possibly, yeah.
That's it. I mean, the good robot was there fighting it, so I mean, maybe he was able to, hold them off and essentially save everyone. But it'd be interesting because it would be a really dark sort of ending to the season where if they actually jump to the new, where the colony destination, Alpha Centauri, and they're all dead. The colony ship never made it, yeah, because they're all dead. So, we're still alone. Shit. That said, though, there's more than one ship going, so
yeah,
there'll be other people, but it'd still be quite a depressing ending.
It would, yeah.
But hey, but yes, they are truly lost, which is actually what he calls the journal book, calls it Lost in Space.
Because of course.
I mean, honestly, it's one of those things where the title's so just literal that it doesn't feel forced that the character would call it that.
No, it's just one of my pet peeves that it always kind of bugs me when we do that.
Because there's definitely times where they'll shoehorn a title of a movie or a show into the story, and it feels really like, you really tried hard to get that in there. I always love it cause one of my favorite ones is Silence of the Lambs. Actually, I brought up Hannibal Lecter earlier because it doesn't bring up the title, but it brings up the reason for the title. Like it does the an alternate version of it that explains why the movie's called that, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
But hey, so there's good and bad examples, but the show's fun as it is. The banter between the characters is back on point for the most part. Don's got his chicken, and they're bonding wonderfully.
Yeah, I'd say the banter's a little bit low key in this episode because it is very much disaster time very early on. So they tend to be a bit more serious. Obviously there was a lot of downtime where maybe one or two of the characters would be in a disaster of some sort and the others would be having banter.
Which may actually be more the case once we've got maybe this opening arc of getting off this planet.
That's my assumption. Done. I'm not worrying that it's gone completely, but I felt less of it. But I think it is because they are all in danger at the same time here, so there's less time for banter. Yeah,
and we also have the thing with this first episode of having to sort of reestablish everyone for the first half of it. And this episode is notably the longest of the season, barring maybe the finale.
I think the last one's 5 minutes longer.
Yeah, but all the other episodes are all in the mid to low 40s. In fact, there's one that's even under 40 minutes. So
the next one, I think.
So yeah, it looks like it's going to be a very tightly paced episodes this season, which I think the last season wasn't super long. It wasn't like some other Netflix shows, but they were all 60 minutes. But I do think the average runtime of this season is a bit lower. So anyway, that is episode 1 of season 2 of Lost in Space. We will check in with episode 2 and see how things progress. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, you do that a couple of ways. You can do it for free by rating the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars. More people will find us that way. You can do it financially over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month to keep all the content coming. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?